Welcome to another edition of the Newark Citizen Forum. I'm here once again with my co-host, Dr. Chris Purnell, and my brother here, Brother Anton. What's good with you, man?
How you doing, bro?
Anton don't feel good today, so we're going to have to, don't mind him. What's up with you, sissy?
I'm good.
We got a lot to talk about.
Good.
All right. Yeah, y'all been noticing the comments on the Newark Speaks?
Yes.
I
it
think
seems
people like the show?
We're loved.
We love. Oh, okay.
Well, at the very least, we're watched.
So we just want to give out some community events. Let me first talk about the event on the Newark Rally for Local Control, which is going to be held Monday, October 24th at Bethany Baptist Church. It's going to be held at 6 o'clock p.m. You got a bunch of coalitions coming together to discuss giving the school board back in local control. So we asking everybody who's viewing this to come out and support that rally. Once again, it'll be at Bethany Baptist Church, 6 o'clock on Monday. Are you attending?
Yes.
You attending that?
Yes.
Are y'all speaking?
Oh,
Yeah,
I
asked me to
haven't
speak,
asked.
so.
Congratulations.
I paid for the flyer.
I know.
That's all. The second event I want to talk about that's coming up is the UMDNJ event, the rallying to fight the changes that's being that they're trying to make at UMDNJ. It'll be held on Tuesday, October 25th, on Bergen and West Market Street from 3:30 to 6 o'clock. What they're trying to do is stop UMDNJ from merging into Rutgers. Are y'all aware of that issue?
Yes.
Yes.
Y'all pro or con on that?
We would need a whole 2 shows for Junior.
That's a heavy
That's
issue.
a heavy issue.
Wow, that's a heavy issue.
And,
You get a quick
and
blurb on that.
you would start the show segment right now. Don't do that.
Okay.
Let's stick to what we have.
Okay.
So they don't want to talk about these 2 issues, which we should be, but we'll talk about
Let's
them
dedicate a
at
show
the
to
rally.
Let's dedicate a show to it.
Okay, all right. Well, we probably gonna need somebody else here on the
Okay.
to actually have some experience because I don't really have that much experience on the UMD other than the labor's point of view, which we think that is gonna have a bad impact on the workers of the merger. So.
Well, just the mere fact of the jobs leaving the city and the county, the impact that it's going to have on that degree,
Yeah.
the revenue streams that'll leave on the local businesses that'll be affected. Because when you talk about mergers, you talk about downsizing personnel and things of that nature. That's the, sometimes that's the reason for a merger.
I mean, plus the whole promise that happened when all the people that were displaced when UMDNJ came to the city. I mean, it's just like it's so many things. There was an agreement that was.
Right.
Well, you're right. We can do a whole show. We need to
Whole
bring
show.
some historical people here to actually
Right.
talk about the deal that was made to actually bring UMDNJ and the promises that they didn't keep
Right, when they brought it here.
when they brought him here. And the reason why they're not developing, y'all ever notice those little small
Blue
blue buildings that they still haven't developed?
Right.
Y'all know there's a reason why they're not developing them. Because it's supposed to revert back to the town. And the problem is, as long as they got these little buildings up on there, it doesn't revert back to the town. So, I mean, what are they there for? Like, why would those little buildings? You would think they would have upgraded or not, right?
Right.
But it's something in the agreement that they can't without the land's supposed to revert back to the town.
Sort of
So
like
that-
the arena deal.
That's crazy. So let's talk about the hot button issue that happened this week. Unfortunately. Ron Saldin was found, the former deputy mayor, Ron Saldin, was found guilty of conspiracy. All the other charges was thrown out. Once again, I think this is a travesty. I don't think that he should have been found guilty. I'm really perplexed, and I'm actually hearing that the judges in the law also don't understand how they can throw out the other charges and actually convict him on conspiracy. I mean, you would actually have to conspire. I mean, who did he conspire with? Because I'm not understanding, right? The person that he conspired with would have to been in power to actually be able to do something, right? Cooper can't be that person because Cooper's not. I mean, if you if you in business and I say, "Ann, I'm gonna help you get business," are we conspiring? Is that now illegal?
I would imagine so, given the precedent set by this case. I really think that it's an unfortunate carriage of justice. It really shows me how the strict and loose interpretation of the law benefits certain classes or certain people than it does everyone else. And I think that's what I've learned from this personally. I think that's what I've taken out of this. And what I really, like I said before, it was a poor use of time and money and services, especially when you have judges. Now these are 2 cases now one with Sharp James,
Right.
and one with Ron Salahuddin and Sonny
Right.
Cooper, where you've had judges, I don't want to use the word admonish the prosecution, but let them know that their case is weak at best and less than stellar in their performance at presenting it. So I don't know what the minds of the jurors are thinking. I don't know what they believe or what stroke, with what brush this picture was painted with, or what stroke of genius and interpretation of the law was made. But it was done. I'm sure he has an opportunity to appeal.
Yes, he is appealing.
I'm sure he has an opportunity to appeal. One of the things that shocked me was Mr. Cooper. We never heard anything.
You never heard
that he
anything
did.
from him.
And he's going to jail because his man was running his mouth or something like that. In retrospect, well, we can say it like that. But, you know, it's definitely a sad occasion, a sad character justice, and it works for who it wants to.
You know, the deal here is right. I mean, let's be clear. I'm not actually surprised at the jury verdict because here we had an all-white jury. And the fact is that, unfortunately, coming from Newark, they think we all corrupt. So, right, we already have this tag that, you know, all of us are corrupt. And then we go into a different place, and we got an all-white jury, which is not a jury of our peers, by the way. And then they because I assume they really didn't see what he did, that they had to find something
Right.
to convict him on. And they chose to convict them on conspiracy charge, which, to be honest with you, the conspiracy charge is actually the worst charge.
Right.
Because that one, it carries the most, right. Conspiracy actually, in some cases, worse than murder.
Right.
Conspiring
to do the crime is worse than the crime itself.
Right. So, I mean, you know, I'm not understanding. How do we get to conspiracy if we throw out all these other charges? Who would he conspire with?
I was actually surprised that he got convicted. Like I said, I don't have the full, let's say, display of facts. I wasn't in the courtroom to hear everything that went on, and I can't condone, let's just say, behavior where you can pay to get access to an opportunity. But I was surprised that he got convicted.
Okay.
From what I knew, I didn't feel like it was necessarily going to have met the merit that you would be convicted of that charge. But what's more concerning and more alarming to me is that the sense that he's just the tip of the iceberg, that maybe something else.
Right.
will
I think that too. I think that as well.
When you mean tip, what are you talking about? Like there's somebody else that's coming up?
I think that there are going to be, there may be an instance where certain deals were cut.
Oh, I'm
already.
sure certain deals were cut.
Certain people talked about certain things already. And this is just going to be the precipice of what really exists. And the reality to it is, in my opinion, this is my total opinion, not fact-based or anything, but it is my opinion that I believe the game has begun to try to keep this as far away from Booker as possible. I don't know how you managed to do that.
Exactly.
Well,
It casts a shadow. It does cast a shadow
I'm
on
not.
the administration. It becomes a stain on the administration. The question is, will that stain actually materialize into something, you know, that's a charge?
Hey Doc, let's be clear. If this was Sharp James, deputy mayor, it would say Sharp James,
That's what I said.
deputy
It
mayor,
does cast a
convicted.
But it does cast a stain on his administration. You do have people now questioning because of the platform in which he run, and not necessarily, maybe not Norkers.
No.
Okay, you do have people in the audience questioning.
But I still think they're going to be just like the jury, the all-white jury that did this conviction, and they're going to believe. Booker's not really one of them. But the rest of those guys, they're corrupt. I mean, the guy even said it on tape. You know what I'm saying? They're all corrupt except Booker. And, you know, and I'm going to say it again. I don't want to give this impression that I think Booker's corrupt. That's not my, I actually don't believe what Salahuddin did. You know, other than actually, I want to get into a deep discussion on why he even had to sit down with Mazzocchi in the first place. But I actually, based on what came out in the trial and what they had, I actually don't think he's done anything other than, you know, what he said he tried to do, and that was to try to get a minority contractor business. Now, he might have went about that the wrong way. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
But let's be clear, right? He didn't have the power to give a contract. He didn't have the power to make the council vote on the contract. Someone had to recommend this contract. The council had to vote on this contract. Somebody had to sign off on the contract. And Salahuddin is nowhere near any of that process. So I'm not understanding. I'm like, where's the conspiracy at, right? Because to me it seems like if you're going to convict a businessman for talking to a deputy mayor about helping them get business, I'm sorry, but everybody in...
You should convict every lobbyist that goes to Congress. You should convict every lobbyist that goes to the state capitol.
Exactly.
I mean, so I don't know if they're saying that because he worked for the administration He wasn't registered as a quote-unquote lobbyist in that regard. If you're
And
looking
that's
at it in
what
that respect, in that
allowed him
vein, that in itself was a law that was broken. I guess when you look at the logistics of it and legally look at what's there, and legally look at how the case law or whatever instances are applied, then you tailor whatever unique response and decision you want from whatever audience you have. I don't think the people who even convicted him, once they sit down in retrospect in 6 months, this man's life will be in turmoil. I think once they even sit down and really look at it and think about it, they may say, hey, what the hell do we do? But to really think or say that this man has done something, when you threw out the other charges, where you may have been able to get up to 20 years for having a conversation and really running his mouth. Right. That's wrong. But it's a gross miscarriage.
So to me, it's no different than Sharp James charge. The Supreme Court threw out Sharp James charge on the I think it was
what is this?
It was about government disclosing the relationship, the government, right? But you could not get to the other charges without having that charge. Right. So I'm not understanding. Like, there would be no mail fraud without that charge. Right. There would be no. I wouldn't think he got convicted for mail fraud. After that charge was gone, right? Defrauding, whatever they called it, right? After that charge was thrown out. Mail fraud. The only thing left, I think, was mail fraud and
predicated on the other.
Exactly.
Right. So I'm like, where? I mean, I'm not understanding. How can you throw out these other some of the charges this jury threw out? You could not get to.
That's why I was surprised at the verdict. I was surprised to hear that he had been convicted. He and Cooper had been convicted of conspiracy, but cleared of extortion and bribery and things of that nature. Something didn't add up to me.
Because if they conspired,
right.
They were also cleared of attempted conspiracy.
It didn't. Something was
attempted conspiracy.
They were also cleared of attempted conspiracy.
Right.
So if they were attempted conspiracy, extortion, bribery, whatever it was, all of it was predicated on them sitting down. You understand what I'm trying to say? Having a discussion or conversation.
And I also find it very curious that someone, let's say, with the history of Mazzocchi, documented history of Mazzocchi, the reputation of Mazzocchi was being used to pick off these two.
Right.
That's almost.
And he walked away with $26 million.
Because that's what he sold his company for.
Right, $26 million. In addition, and somebody brought this up today, that this man walked away with $26 million. You got to understand that the government allowed him to sell a company that he said he built on bribery.
Right.
He admits that.
Bribe for government contract. So you turn states, when you talk for us, you wear a lie, you get to keep your $26 million. And the fact that you made
somebody bought a company that they thought was viable, right? That the government allowed for him to sell his company. They bought this company thinking that this is a viable company because it's been making profit. And then he gets into a court hearing and said, well, I built that company based on the fact that I bribed everybody.
I would love to connect the dots to the people who bought the company from.
They probably pissed. They probably pissed at their ass because they probably looking like.
I'm sure they.
I mean, unless we bribe, they probably unless we bribe, then.
No, I'm sure they carry on this tradition. I'm sure.
But the other point that gets to me, and it's something I spoke about the council. It's actually a point that Baraka made, and that is, why is it the fact that we would even have a minority sitting down with a non-minority in a minority-controlled town, having to even be on wire or videotape, trying to get business for. Trying to get a contract to get minority business when we are minority controlled. How is it that after 42 years of controlling the city of Newark, that minorities are in the position that we actually have to go beg non-minorities to allow for us to be a part of their contract, to have opportunities in a town that they could not have opportunities unless we voted on it? I mean, what do y'all two think about that?
I mean, my thing is more philosophical than concrete or complex. There was this lady, Dr. Joy Leary, she talked about the post-traumatic slave syndrome and how whatever we feel we do sometimes, we need the validation of those who formerly oppressed us. We can always make bones about that. Naeem Akbar talked about that in his book, Visions for Black Men. Wade Nobles in his psychological parodies, in his psychology parodies or whatever, talked about things like that. Frances Cress Wilson in her ISIS papers definitely touches on things like that, about how we are prone to self-deprecation.
So what are you telling everybody, go get those papers?
He's saying saying
You
stay.
coming up here with
He's
all
saying
this.
learn.
No, what I'm saying is
Learn,
this.
my people.
What I'm saying is
Y'all
this.
got that?
Some
Teacher
people
and
believe-
time.
Some people believe that we practice self-deprecation and it can be seen
No.
when we don't empower our community economically.
Right.
We don't choose to empower our community economically.
And-
And that's a problem. It's no different than the bodegas being on the stores, the liquor stores being on the store on the corner, then another establishment. We own the church and go to the church, but we don't own the other
Or the
establishment-
barbershop,
Or the barbershop. But we don't own the other establishments that are draining money out of our community.
Because oftentimes what's lacking is a sense of solidarity. Right?
Right.
And even if it's just solidarity around you should be given opportunity and access.
That's right.
And that's what unfortunately is oftentimes lacking in urban centers, and particularly in the African American community. I mean, I've experienced it. Is this sense of you see other groups able to open the door and to say, look, I want you to at least have a fight or fighting chance of being able to walk in this opportunity, walk in this access. We don't have that solidarity. And let's not confuse solidarity with saying, oh, we have monolithic thought. You know, we all think alike. We all approach problems the same. And, you know, I have to hire everyone who looks like me. No, you should give people opportunities.
Totally.
How you know, especially when you know how you fought
Right.
to have an opportunity. We still have a disadvantaged mindset.
Yes. Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
I just find it, and the problem I find, I said this to the council, the fact that at some point we gotta get beyond just talking about these issues, because
We
we
have to do
actually been
something.
talking about it,
We have
and
to
they
do
actually got to do something,
We have to do something.
and these folks are in position, right? And at some point they gotta actually make some decision. It's just not enough to keep going to a council meeting or any beyond
And
the
the
council
same
meeting. Rather,
people.
it is the same folks who are your peers, and you saying to them, "This is a problem." Yet there is never a resolution to how it is that we fix that problem. This is an easy problem to fix, folks. By the way, I don't think this is no very complicated problem to ensure that minorities, especially in a minority-controlled town, that we ensure that they have opportunity at these contracts, and that if they can't get bonding, if they can't, that we ensure that we force people. That, listen, the same way that we made a rule that said contractor got to hire, we put a rule on the table that says, okay, to get a contract in the city, no, you have to have a minority contract that we can call it mentoring.
Well,
You know what I'm saying?
Or
To
at
get
least we
business.
should set up
what is
conditions
what is
where
going
we
Right.
can
on?
actually truly begin to have
Right.
diverse representation, because we
Right.
don't necessarily have diverse representation in opportunity.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
I understand.
We may have people in positions, we may have different people of different ethnic groups, but we don't have enough people walking in diverse opportunities. Diverse sectors
Mm-hmm. Diverse
of business,
sectors of business. I
diverse
understand.
sectors of public life. We don't have enough of that, and that's just not a problem that's unique to Newark. That's a problem that we need to be able to tackle in the culture.
Right.
And it, you know, at opposing ends of that is this a sense of entitlement, or is this a sense of creating an opportunity? You know, and I find myself oftentimes wanting to walk that line of, it's not that I want entitlement, I just want opportunity to be empowered.
Okay. I look at it this way though, and just in closing on this note, anything we want to do only takes the political will.
Yeah,
It's all about policy.
right.
You know, that's why people have lobbyists, so
Right.
they can go convince and persuade
Right.
people that their policy is what they need because it affects their bottom line, which
Right.
is their economic quota.
Right.
So until we really understand true economics in the sense of it, because we want to hold our politicians accountable for whether or not they got us a turkey on Thanksgiving.
Right.
We want to hold
Oh.
our politicians accountable for whether or not they came to our birthday.
Or
party.
pothole.
We want to hold our politician accountable whether or not he knocked on my door and said
Right.
hey to me.
Bus
Right.
trip
Forget the
or-
fact that that door has a gate on it with bars and your window has
Right.
bars on it and your
Right.
kid can't walk to school.
Right.
We want to hold our politicians accountable for the things that sometimes don't matter.
Right.
You know, they're morally feel-good things, but they're not what's helping you deal with
Exactly.
the
Right.
conditions that
Exactly.
you're in.
Exactly.
They're not the type of issues that uplift you out of the conditions that you're in. And until
not
we get
transformative
an understanding,
issues.
and not by anything am I saying that I am of or from or in a dumb community.
No.
Not by any means am I criticizing my people in that respect. But we do need to wake up because the griots, the older people have gotten tired and they can't walk the walk anymore.
So I'm
Not that
sorry,
they don't want
I
to.
gotta say that I think we do live in a dumb community. And the problem is that we live
That's a big
by.
generalization.
That's a big
Well, I'm sorry, but I'm sorry until they
you know
prove
what?
me.
I think that
Until they
so
prove me
long-
differently, I'm gonna say that.
I said,
because
let me say
we
this,
continuously
Dr.
do the same thing,
But let
and
me
that's
say
the
this.
definition of being dumb.
That's the
Maybe there's a
definition
lack
of
of sophistication
sophistication.
around the issue.
No, the
This
problem
is
is that we were
this was
bred and
always my
trained to
theory.
do a certain thing, and
I
we
don't think it was
continue
that.
on that
I
path.
think this is my issue. When we talk about politics in general in our community, so I don't want to make the generalization, Doc. But what I want to say is this: we got to voter registration. We got to voter participation. But it behooved us not to really go fully in on voter education.
But
because
right, it benefited those in
Right.
power.
So what I'm saying though,
But we
and
still let it happen.
But us as a community and how we came up socially, we were socially trained to trust our politicians.
Anton, the problem
because
is-
it was the politicians who said they came through the civil rights movement, like
I
the John
agree.
Lewises and the
Agree.
John Conyers
Agree.
and people like that. And then people like Kendrick Meeks and people like that. Floyd Flake.
So you're
people-
talking about a generational
a generational shift.
We were
that-
going on one trajectory,
Exactly.
and that trajectory either plateaued and then
Exactly. And
went
then
in
we
a different direction.
became, some of us, more elitists with the 10% theory, all right, the talented 10th theory, as opposed to dealing with the other 90 in that regards. They just became the people who could vote for us, who could support us.
Yeah, but we don't
who could-
have to. But the problem, we don't participate. We don't choose to be
Because
educated.
there's so much
We do
social apathy.
Man,
There's
listen,
so much apathy in our community.
Yeah,
man,
but-
because
but-
they're so disappointed.
I'm sorry, but there's always going to be
People-
apathy.
There's
There's
always
always
gonna
going to
be
be
apathy, right? There's
a
always gonna be
situation
apathy.
that doesn't make you happy. But the problem is, I'm sorry, I'm just going to put it off on laziness. It's the fact that people just don't want to get up. They don't want to come to a
Rock,
meeting.
not
They
everybody
don't want
can
to
get
learn.
up. Not everybody can come to a meeting.
That's not true.
It is
I'm,
true.
Well, I'm
Not
not saying.
everybody can
I'm
do
saying
that.
that the majority of them can
Some
be
people
made
are
aware.
afraid to come out of their home.
But why?
Why you think, man?
But a lot of this
It's
is
just an
fed by
excuse, man.
irresponsible behaviors and actions on the part of stakeholders.
Okay.
Right? Because if you can rile people up or rally people around, let's say, the periphery or the perimeter of an issue, but you don't rally them or rile them up around the meat and the potatoes around the issue or walk them even further, one, that person needs to be called out for irresponsible behavior. And two, like you said, the constituent, the citizen needs to be called out for always having to be led to the water to drink.
Right.
On both sides
Well,
of this.
let me
But
say
I
this
think
here.
our
I found
politicians
myself.
need to be more adamant about expressing.
But the problem, but they don't. But they
You
don't.
can't. You don't elect. Listen, if I ever ran for anything, don't elect me to office and then 6 months expect me to have done everything you want to do. If you
It's
didn't,
not-
it's not plausible.
Well, a
6
lot
months
of
before
but a
election,
lot
you
of
mad at me.
But a lot of
It's
them
not
say,
gonna work.
Anton, but here's
We
the
got to
point.
stay together for however long that term you supported me for
Yeah,
to
but-
go in.
but
We
Anton-
have to work together that entire term.
But Anton, a lot of them say that the problem is that they don't do anything to agitate the situation to make sure it happens. You know, I find myself lately, even when it comes to my union, trying to agitate my members, sometimes trying to piss certain folks off just to see if they're going to come out. Because folks don't, you know, it's like, you know, they get comfortable with the fact that they believe that you got the answers, that I elected you because I believe you got the answers. And and that's not necessarily
not
true.
saying that there
It's that
aren't
you have
people
a
who think
vision,
like that.
but you also got to turn around here and bring your own skin in the game. You also got to turn around. Listen, if I pay money into something, I want to make sure it works for me. And the problem here is that we got people here paying taxes to a community that they don't make sure it works for them. They're losing their home. They're losing their job. There's no economic opportunity. Everything that's around
Not
them.
because they were trained.
And let's be clear
through
that it don't.
movement to say to deal with it like this.
But
I
Anton,
got you.
it don't happen in every
people who
community.
ask them-
New leaders must arise because what we have
Oh,
is
stop
wait
it,
no
New
when I
York,
say
stop.
when I say new leaders, hear me. And you can be and this is the idea of servant leadership. This is the idea of citizen leadership. Okay.
Right.
New leaders must arise because we have people who are engaged in the process but are not empowered
in the
by
by the process. She's
Right?
right.
So if leadership is not happening from the elected official, where I'm going to say the burden is still going to be on that elected official to actually, you know, integrate that person into the process more outside of the fluff, outside of the dinners, outside of the bus trips. But in the same token, the citizens must step up, like Rock is saying. So you know, I have a professor who once told me, I can't empower you. You can only choose to be empowered by what I offer you.
Exactly.
And I believe
Exactly.
it's a certain point where, you know, you can put things in front of me and I still have to choose those things. I'm just saying the politicians aren't necessarily putting all the things in front of the people and people aren't necessarily choosing or asking for them.
Let me say this. One thing I take from that, though, I like when Cornel West always says, if you want to lead the people, you got to love the people. You understand what I'm trying to say? In order to really serve the people, you have to understand what your people's needs are. And I think what happens with some of our leadership is they get removed from what the real issues are. Right? They become really deeply removed from that. They become aloof. I mean, especially then when generational folk get in, when we have people that do get in, fighting the establishment, they can't become silent. They can't get tired because that's what we fought for. Just like when our generation feels the need to come into power, or has come into power, it is about pulling the next one behind you. It's not about getting there and saying, all right, I got to do what I got to do to maintain.
But that's not happening.
It's not happening.
And see, that's my point, is that, we did a lot of these meetings where we, and you was a part of that. Dr. Chris just really came aboard of what we used to do. But we did a lot of meetings, Anton, in the past where that's the stuff that we talked about we wanted to do. It never really happened. Right? People got into power. It's like every time I gotta remind people, we're in power now, right? But we promised that we would do a certain thing. But we're in power now. We are. Right? But the reality is we promised that we would do something and we're not doing it. Your situation, what you're trying to seek employment in a position where, to be honest with you, the individual that's in charge of that position should want to turn around and put somebody in one of those top positions that is loyal to them and that is somebody that he could trust to bring information to him and to play. And I'm saying that's not happening.
But I respect,
why that's not happening? But
I respect competitive fields, and I understand. You just have to
what do we
compartmentalize
compete
and
against?
internalize.
But aren't we duplicating the same mistakes? I know we got to move on. But it seems like we duplicate the same mistakes that we complain other people do. And we sat in rooms and said we wouldn't do that, and we're actually doing that.
Well, that's
because it's becoming about us now. It's about our ego. We did now. How do I maintain it?
Like my brother told me the other day. So if you believe in it, depending on how you do, when you have an ego, you're easing God out.
I want to talk about this Facebook. It was an article that came out about the Facebook, the money that the editorial. I guess I don't know what you call this thing. The group,
editorial board.
The group, whatever. What do they call
Oh,
it? Facebook
Foundation.
group. The foundation. They just call it the foundation.
Or
the Foundation for Newark's Future.
Yes.
Okay. So the Foundation for Newark's Future, whose director getting paid for almost $400,000, which is beyond me. I really would like to know what this guy's day-to-day duties is. That he deserved $400,000 for a $100 million grant. We got a superintendent that is only able to make a certain amount of money, and she got almost $1 billion budget that she maintained. She actually got duties, right? And he's making almost twice money that she's making. I'm not understanding. In addition to this guy, I mean, the arrogance of these folks who come into our time. This is where I have a problem with elitist philanthropy, because that's what it is to me. That they gonna come because first of all, I didn't ask for the money. Booker asked for it, right? Another one, their elitist. Crew members asked for this money. He got the money. He came in here. We really don't know what he's doing with the money. We do understand that his position is to push charter schools. I mean, rather we want to have a debate on whether charter schools or whatever is pro or con. I don't really want to get into that debate. But the nerve of them to come up in here now, after this guy said he was going to include the community into how this money be spent, that now Mr. Gregory Taylor is saying that the community will not be involved unless you got a $10 million deposit.
Well, I said to you like this.
A $10 million donation, rather.
A long time ago, and I hate for it just to be old guard rhetoric, but someone said this city would be for sale. And you know what?
$100 million?
Everything's on the sidewalk right now. The Board of Education. Keith is doing a great job at the Housing Authority. But clearly we don't own City Hall anymore. We don't own a lot of our buildings anymore. So someone said there was going to be a fireside sale in the city of Newark, and they started it. And what you have to realize is that some people need, and this goes back to your point where I will agree with you. Now the community needs to take ownership for this, because they're responsible for the person who created this quote-unquote phantom policy that this should exist.
Right. So,
I'll take responsibility. Maybe I didn't campaign hard enough for whatever issue I thought would help deter this type of behavior in government. To pay someone almost $400,000 to really understand a person making $34,000 a month when the median family income of a person in the city of Newark is maybe 32.
It probably is that.
It probably is that. Maybe that's 26
that.
actually. Exactly 26. And then the median family income of a family in Essex County is about $60,000. So you're talking about the suburbs, Essex Fells, places like that. For this man to be doubling or tripling in some cases. If you have people who work in odd jobs like aides or medical assistants and things of that nature, for him to realize in a month, their yearly salary is disrespectful. It goes against every premise that this individual or these people involved say they really want to fix the issues in North schools, because you can't deal with issues of education if you don't deal with the socioeconomic issues in your community.
Exactly, but they don't want to hear that.
You can't. I don't
elitist philanthropy.
I
folks
don't
want to hear
believe that. That's why I support the notion that murder is a public health issue, crime. For sure, it's definitely a public health issue. And I think things like this show what people really feel about Newark. It's just about capitalizing and investment and pushing your agenda through, because at the bottom line, it's about making money.
Because I think the arrogance though. I mean, to me, this whole interview and editorial is strictly elitist, liberal, rich bullcrap. And I'm like, the nerve of them to even sit at an editorial board and say to some of the stuff that they said in this to this editorial board in the city of Newark.
It's paternalism, okay? And let me explain what I mean when I say that. It's the idea and the notion that the community itself could not support problem solving, or could not support solutions, or could not support coming together and saying how can we make our way out of this quagmire, because we are in a mess, okay? We are in a mess.
Yes, I agree.
We are in a mess, and we do need to own up to that, because far too long we were silent as we saw this school, this community education-wise slide off of a cliff.
But Zuckerberg money is not going to do that.
No, Zuckerberg money is not going to do that. But what this is saying, that when people don't think you are really concerned, engaged, or empowered, it allows them to be paternalistic. It allows them to come in and to say, you know what?
We know what's best for you.
Transparency really is a slogan.
That's right.
This guy is even saying that
we make choices and decisions for you.
And he's saying that.
Yeah.
He's saying that you're not even going. He said that the advisors who's supposed to be the residents will not even be able to make suggestions to the board. The arrogance.
He said people took the promise too literal.
Yes.
That's what he said.
Yes.
Right. And how else are you supposed to take the comment where you said there's going to be transparency and community involvement? There is no misinterpreting that.
I mean, one thing. I mean, at the end of the day, listen. The Zuckerberg money, whatever that Corey, I don't want to knock the fact that he got $100 million. I mean, great, whatever, right? But I'm like, Joan, that might be their money, but these are our kids.
Right.
At the end of the day, how dare you?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? First of all, the budget for the Board of Education is $1 billion annually almost.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So that little $100 million is a drop in the bucket. Right. And for them to continue, it's like they want to keep. It's like almost like they doing us a favor.
No, what you have to also understand too is that the money allows them to propagate their agenda, and that is that because all.
Well, that's what he said.
Is that because all Newark schools are bad?
Right.
That's right. We need to do this.
Philanthropy.
Because the schools in Newark are this bad, we need to do this. The people have shown that they can't run it. The state has shown that they can't run it. So we need to come in and run it.
I haven't seen nothing that they've come up with or supporting with this $100 million that I think is going to change the educational system. Not one thing.
Yes, you did. $500,000 commissioner serve.
I mean, not one thing have I seen that they're going to fund this board of education that's going to help these kids. Because like you said, unless you deal with the social, now you can play this game and you can say that, that doesn't matter when you're raised in Harrington Park and, you know what I'm saying, you raised in a middle class family and you didn't live that lifestyle. It's easy for you to say that, right? But it's harder when you're dealing like a brother like me who grew up in a household who, when my stepfather died at 14 years old, it was 13 of us. My mother was abusing drugs at the time. Pretty much we all had to go out there and fend for ourselves out there, find ways to eat. I mean, it's easy for folks who have stable homes to say, your socioeconomic issues don't matter. And when I'm saying to you, that's bullcrap, because it mattered to me, because I wasn't concerned about education when I was 15 years old. I was concerned how I'm going to eat.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? I was concerned how I was going to get clothes on my back. I mean, it wasn't being provided. You know what I'm saying? And so I left home at 16 years old. So I'm saying, it's easy for folks who have these elitist attitude that's born in these lifestyles or have these lifestyles or these stable homes that they grew up in, that they come in here and they make these statements that the social and economic conditions doesn't affect education. That's bull crap. I'm sorry. I know people say it is not an excuse. When you have a kid that's going to a home, if there's drug abuse, if there's alcohol abuse,
Violence,
if there's violence
domestic
going on in
abuse.
the home, and then when they go outside, they dealing with the same thing, drugs, they're on their block, they gotta see gang members, they walking to school, they gotta see crime. If you got kids seeing this on an everyday, if you don't think that this gonna affect their mindset,
The music
you gotta
they
be
listen to, the
kidding.
shows
No,
they
it
watch.
does.
You
on
gotta
TV.
be kidding me. It does affect
The
them.
way I think about it is, a 360 degree of involvement, right? So you have this one child, but there's something going on in the arc around that child, and there are different players in that child's life. I must say this before. As a community, we've been poor and we've still been educated.
Right.
We can't get to the point where poor kids can't get educated.
Right, I agree.
Because
I
then
agree.
we handicap them.
I agree.
We say, education is no longer a way out for
We
you.
give you a permanent crutch.
We give you, a way to say this is not something that you should fight or reach for. The problem is that just like one child has a whole arc, a whole wraparound services, as people say, a community must be involved in that 360 degree solution. And what this is propping up and what this is propagating is that the community is not. There are bright, bold minds in the city of Newark, okay? And it's not until the professionals within the city can, sometimes I wonder, are professionals bothered about being left out?
I think so.
But are they bothered to the sense where they make that heard and they say, okay, I'm not going to no longer take my grievances just to those who I feel are ignoring me, but I'm going to be a little bit more sophisticated, a little more savvy about it. I want to see my people do things like Occupy Wall Street. And when I say by that, I want to see my people be able to step forward and to say, this is what our community needs, this is what our community lacks, and put our ideas out there. Let ideas compete against ideas, because as long as we shout at the door, paternalism will continue to go.
Yes.
It will continue to go. People will sit in a room and people will say, you don't understand the sophistication of this matter. People will say this is a little bit more complex than your rallies. This is a little bit more complex than your anger. But we have to be able to sit across the table from one another without vilifying one another and saying, no, let's come up with ideas.
But Doc, it is more complex though.
It is complex, but it's not so complex that we don't have a say.
Yeah.
It's not
so complex that we don't know the
it's not
solutions.
so
We're living.
it's
Yeah,
not
but
so
the
complex that we can't-
the solutions.
we can't be invited to the table.
Right.
That's
but
not, that's like
right.
saying a person.
I agree with
That's
that.
like saying
I
a
agree with
person
that.
who's been in recovery for 20 years and hasn't had a backslide wouldn't be a good drug
Well,
addict.
I agree. Listen, I'm
Come
saying
on,
that
man.
you can change your life, but you got to start. Listen, my mother changed her life, right? You know what I'm saying? And I'm saying to you, but she had to start with her, right? And I always tell people, I wish I had my mother when she began to change. I wish when I was a kid, my mother was the way she is now, right? Because I would have turned out differently. I would have did things. All my brothers went to prison. You know what I'm saying? I was the only cat that didn't go to prison. So there is a direct effect to what goes on in the environment that you are growing up in, that if it's not addressed, if it's not dealt with, if there isn't some community aspect to,
Right.
you know what I'm saying, dealing, because it does start with the community, right?
Right.
And if there isn't a point, right, where the community, listen, my son went to New Providence to go to school. Right? New Providence school graduates their kids. 97% of the kids that go to New Providence graduate their school. But guess what? 97% of the household in New Providence got a stable household. So them kids, there
are different definitions and interpretations of stable. And
Because I went to school in Glen Ridge and all those
houses weren't stable, I'm sure.
well, even if they weren't stable,
Especially in Glen Ridge.
They weren't all stable.
it was stable to the point where,
To the
you know what
point
I'm
where
saying, they
some
can
strange
graduate.
things happen in Glen Ridge.
Well,
one time.
and I'm sure some strange things happen in New Providence, but at the point that it's still, if you go look at what's going on with the social and economic conditions in New Providence, those kids ain't walking to school looking at gangs. Those
Well,
kids ain't
let
walking
me
to
say
school
this.
dealing with,
Let me
the
say
health
this.
issues when you're dealing with.
Having wealth and being able to be and being able to socially sustain, economically sustain yourself are two different things. People that can economically sustain themselves raise good homes. Some of them are single parent households.
Right.
You have a lot of men now raising
Right.
families. You have a lot of women saying, "Yo, we did it long enough.
Right.
Take your kids." And you have people who are economically they're sustaining themselves.
Right.
They know how to budget, they know how to
I'm an
plan,
example of that. My dad
things
worked
like
2
that.
jobs.
You have situations where there may be wealth, where you may have a father who may be a director of a department making 100,000. You may have a mother who may be a professor or something making another 100,000. So that's a different level of wealth, of understanding, of intake, of income, a different tax bracket. But with those economic amenities comes different responsibilities and different things that you have to be committed to in order to make sure, one, you keep that flowing, that money coming in, and two, that you keep the peace of mind that you have in order to go out to keep that flowing. So we need to look at things like that. So just because a person lives in a 15-room house or whatever, has both the
Doesn't
mom
mean
and dad
they
in the house,
figure it out.
that doesn't mean anything, because I know a lot of kids who came from
Yeah, but
two-parent households and they messed
but-
up bad.
Yeah, but the chances of them failing
But you
is
wanna
not
know
as
what
great
it
as
does me?
what
You
happens
wanna
in
know
our
what it does
city.
me? And I can speak to this specifically because I was a kid who grew up in East Orange, who quickly I realized and my parents realized in order for me to be able to achieve my dreams of becoming a doctor, I had to go to a more competitive school system, just point blank. I had to go to a more competitive school system. So I became a tuition student and I went to Glen Ridge.
Okay.
I went to Glen Ridge High School, right? What a certain socioeconomic status affords you, unfortunately, is a respect. People respect you and invite you to the table. There are certain, I saw parents storm into my school at will.
Yeah.
And tell teachers things they were going to say and not say.
Oh, I
to their
agree.
students.
That happened in New Providence.
I see them
I
on the
agree.
boards and
I
say
agree.
what they're going to teach and what they're not going to teach.
I agree.
So that's where a socioeconomic status affords you a respect. That's wrong, but
Right.
that's the
I
reality.
agree.
That's a
I agree.
reality.
I agree.
What's happening in Newark is that Newark is painted with a broad brushstroke, right? So people come into Newark who are unfamiliar with Newark, and they lump everybody together and say, okay, this person is not concerned, is not engaged, is not empowered, so I can make decisions and think for this person.
Right.
That's not necessarily true about everybody
About
in Newark.
everybody.
And that's not tied to whether or not, they have a degree or they have money, okay? Because it's some grandmothers who are more engaged and empowered
That's
than,
right.
some folks who are doing well.
That's
The
right.
problem is not until we stand up outside of the political structure and inside of the political structure and say, look, the status quo is not attainable. We cannot allow this to continue to go. Otherwise, we stay muck and mired in mess.
Yes.
In mess.
Yes.
This brother here, I don't know him personally, no affront to him. I
No,
don't,
he's
I don't.
a joke
I
in
give
my
everybody a right to want to earn, but this is lopsided.
This is beyond excessive.
This is lopsided.
Right.
He ODing on
Right.
cash.
This is
Right.
lopsided. And there-
Well, you can see what he is. He
That's
looks like a bank. He looks like one of the Wall Street people we should be
I
protesting.
mean, I'm insulted by the language he said. He
The
said,
language is very
that's not
offensive.
how professional philanthropy
No.
works. You don't
Right.
have a
No,
right
how dare
to be
him,
at
bro.
the table.
They making
insulting.
money off
I
of
really
That's
take his comment. The people took the promise too literal. I really think that he really insulted our intelligence.
Oh,
He
and
really
we
insulted
putting up with it,
and
bro.
and we letting it happen. But
Right.
hey,
I hope we stop it.
Once
there, Ron.
again,
I wanted to deal with
That's
one
right.
more.
yeah.
I wanted to deal with one more issue, and this is some criticism that I want to discuss about things said about at the council, and especially about you, Dr. Purnell, because
Yes.
I'm just so sick of the nonsense out there.
Right.
When the funny thing is, a lot of people ask me on the show, well, two things. Well, they say, I know why you got Anton, that's your man, but why'd you get Dr. Purnell? And the funny thing, I said, well, first of all, Anton and Dr. they both bring something to the shop, right?
Right.
So you can't tell me that they don't bring anything. They both intelligent. They both, have something input to bring to the show. And Father, I'm sorry, y'all both have a right to be here. Sitting down. I'm not here trying to create candidates like I was being accused of by somebody. Big groom. I'm some big.
You Michael Papa?
But yeah, but I mean this. But I'm not understanding this division.
Right.
And it sound we all in the same boat. Like, what makes Dr. Purnell any different than any other person in this time that want to get involved and do something? I mean, I'm really pissed off with Shockley comments that he came up to the council. I
Right.
mean, man, see, it's one thing to go after me and Raz. I really don't give a crap about him going after me and Raz because I just don't think this guy. I mean, to take Shockley serious, you actually first have to get past the shirt that he continues to wear that has Booker on it with a slash, and then he gets up there and says, "I don't have a problem with Booker." You know what I'm saying? So to actually take him serious, you first got to get past that shirt he been wearing for 5 years, talking about some, supposed to be about anti-Booker, but he don't have a problem with him. But, to get up there, he's late to the game. He must don't know. I mean, Rad's been having these unity meetings for the last, I think, 5 months now. You know what I'm saying? And for him to get up there and make the comment, like he just found something out.
Like I should have been invited
right, and make the statement while we're Dr. Purnell there on at the council meeting. Right, at the council meeting.
Run out of town.
I'm not, like, those comments to me are disturbing because it gives the impression that we are not supposed to work with our peers. And that's the most ignorant stuff that I see. I want to be clear. Steve Autobotto is not, and he probably going to look, if he ever watched this show, he probably would flip me defending him. He's not my enemy, Anton. You know what I'm saying? He might be my opponent, right? But guess what? So what? There's a lot of cats. There's cats sitting on that council that's going to be my opponent one day. Right. I mean, this notion that I can't.
They don't know you and our opponents.
Right. You know what? That's why I want to tell people, like, if y'all don't think, man, Anton, y'all got to be kidding. We scream at each other every day on the phone. We screaming at each other, and I'm sitting up here like, what is this thing that you can't sit down with people and talk to them?
You know what? And I'll say this. The beauty of having differences is when you really get into the philosophical discussion or understanding, regardless of what your addiction is. You really see that you both want the same thing. And that's what I respect about forming a relationship with Dr. Purnell. We didn't have to be on the same side of the school board issue, but at the end of the day, we want the same thing.
Right.
I think that, like I said before, a tad bit of spirituality, people's egos tend to take over their commitment to service. I have no qualms or quarrels with anybody. Anybody feels the need to speak with me or to me or against me, just have plausible solutions and show me how they work, and I'll show you how mine work, and we can put the clean glass next to the cleaner glass. Whatever you want to do. Right. I don't get into that pontifical nonsense anymore. I used to do it to the point where I would get mad. I guess when I was fatter, I used to be angry all the time, and I would jump on the table and want to fight. I'm not going to do that anymore.
I used to do it too.
I think it's about putting down solutions, and when you're able to discuss, and you know what the real problem too is, Rockmond? That in this town we only have forums, we don't have true debates.
That's true.
So people aren't really able to present who they are. Right. We have discussants that are telling and tapered with conversational rhetoric by the power brokers because they supply the questions so they can get the prescribed response that they want. So I can't even make a personal character judgment about Dr. Purnell because I don't know her that way. Right. And when I get to know her that way, I'm sure whatever's there, you understand what I'm trying to say? It's totally different than what's being projected. Okay, we're home. Everybody wants to protect their home turf. I can protect my intellectual thought and capacity and not be insulting or just show that, hey, man, this was this. I'm not with you on this, but I'm with you on that. And I think that's what true relationship building is. I always say. I heard this from an old guy a long time ago. In Newark, in anything, the proof is in the relationships. And you have to build them. You have to know which bridges to preserve and which ones to burn when you cross.
But why do we create enemies?
Yes, but then, and let me speak.
Fictional enemies. Why do we have to have a bad guy,
Let me say a few words about that.
Why are you the bad guy?
I can tell you why I am the bad guy.
Why? Tell me.
Because nobody here made me.
All right, okay.
In Newark, it's important who made you.
That's true.
Or who thinks that they made you. And, I tell people all the time, look, you want to know who the big in my life is? It's Big Tim. It's my father who didn't go to college, who started out at Bell Labs cutting grass, but made sure his kids went to college.
That's right.
And who impressed upon me every day the need to be excellent. When we cannot invite excellent people to the table, there is a problem.
There's a problem.
Our community will implode. Our community will implode. Look at South Africa is dealing with this right now. They're calling it the brain drain, right? Yes. Because they're pushing out knowledge capital.
That's right.
We continue to push out capital. We push out social capital. We push out knowledge capital because we say, okay, I am ideologically parked here, and I'm supposed to be against you.
That's right.
The way that I operate, look, I'm a black woman who's a doctor. No one ever gave me a silver spoon saying, hey, I want to train you. I had to fight. So I had to go into the operating room with people who were racist. I had to stand across from the table with people who held a scalpel, and I held a scalpel too, and not kill that patient, but I knew what they felt about black people because they told me during the operation. I still had to be able to maintain a professional decorum
Okay.
and still treat that patient and save that life at the end of the day, because that's what a professional does.
That's right.
That's what a professional does. A professional says and tells you, I mean, come on, anyone who has ever met me, I don't slouch for anybody in anybody's room, whether it's a closed door meeting or whether it's a public meeting. I'm
Okay.
going to say what I need to say no matter who you are, just because it's how I was raised. So this notion that, oh, she's an outsider, she was hatched otherworldly in some other place and brought here.
Hatched world.
You know,
Yeah,
yeah, literally.
I'm
And I'm
like,
like,
I'm so-
that's an insult to my grandfather who had
Yeah.
the store on Central Avenue.
That's
That's an
right.
insult to my mother who came in 1957. That's an insult to this professional black woman who made the choice and the decision to invest back in the city. That should be the litmus test. Are you investing in the city?
I'll tell you this right here, and I'll leave with this, and I'll end my comment with this. The only thing I can, that in my mind I can explicate this is fear. My father always told me, if you're the smartest man in the room, you got a problem. You're the dumbest. If you are the smartest man in whatever room you walk in, you the dumbest. You need to get in a room with someone
Right.
who knows more, that
Iron
can elevate
sharpens
you,
iron.
that can try you and challenge you to be the best that you can be. Because at the end of the day, like I said, we both want the same
We
thing.
want the same thing.
Yes. So listen, let me end it with that. Doc, I hope you stick around. I hope
Oh,
you
definitely.
ignore the
Definitely.
They're not
I
gonna
didn't
beat up
even
on
know-
Anton as
I
that.
didn't even know I was
They
being
think me
called
and Anton conspiring anyway. So they'll never beat up on Anton that much, because at the end of the day they like, when they say something about Anton, they always got to finish with, well, Anton good with me too. Because they know me and him tight.
I love everybody.
You know what I'm saying? So it's like, it's always going to be that issue right there. But it seems like, they want to use you as this target. And,
Yes.
I'm like, and it's funny, I'm like, I don't even have to defend her. She can defend herself. But I'm
Right.
just so tired of hearing this crap. I'm just so, this negativity, like, don't.
Because making me
Feed
the
it. I hope you ignore it.
It protects the status quo.
Yeah.
That's all it does.
Listen,
Exactly.
I hope you ignore it.
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
sure
I
we
didn't
don't
even know
agree
I was
on
being
certain
called
things.
out that night. Like you said, when
Yeah,
I
I know.
saw the I was like, is
Crazy,
he
like-
calling my name?
I'm sorry I wasn't at that council meeting. I'll make sure I never miss another night council meeting for the rest of the year.
But listen, I want to thank everybody for watching the show. We'll see you next time here at the Newark Citizen. Hope you have a wonderful 2 weeks. We'll be back in 2 weeks, and we'll see you later.
Good night.
Go well.